Recording in progress.
Okay, it's open to the public now.
Okay, I'm going to call this City Council Budget and Finance Committee to order. Let the record reflect that Councilmember Lamnin and I are present, and I think we're expecting Councilmember Wahab to join, but she is not here yet. So I'll ask now if there are any public comments. And I don't really see any attendees from the public. And is there anybody here who wants to make a public comment? Okay, if not, we will move on to approval of the minutes of the meeting of January 19th.
So moved.
All right, I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Okay, let the record indicate that Councilmember Lamnin is a thumbs up, as am I. So we have finished that part and approved the minutes. So now we're going to go back to our agenda, and we are going to talk about the mid-year budget review. For fiscal year 2022, mid-year budget and general fund long-range financial model update. And I suppose, Mr. Clausen, you're going to take that away, right?
Well, I will do the introduction tonight, Mayor. But then Nicole Gonzalez, our deputy director, is actually going to do the presentation, but I'll give a brief introduction. Obviously, you saw the 13-page report, so I won't sit here and go rehash that whole thing. It is certainly a different outlook than we were looking at 2 years ago as the pandemic started. Happy to be here to report that, but without further ado, Nicole, take it away. I will share my screen.
Thank you. I am going to go off screen just for a bit. My internet tends to work better when my video is not on, so I want to make sure that my presentation's clear. So when you're ready, Dustin, if you can share the presentation.
I am working on it. Here we go. All right. Can you guys see my screen yet?
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Thank you. So as Dustin stated, the presentation tonight is the fiscal year 22 mid-year budget review and the general fund long-range financial model update. Happy to present this evening. Definitely a different outlook, and we will spend the next several minutes kind of going through what those changes are and answer any questions you have at the end. This is a summary here of the general fund mid-year request specifically related to expenditures. That top half of the table represent previously approved council appropriations. So these are budget appropriation increases that were presented to council previous to the mid-year review, which represents $1.5 million that was previously approved by council. The second part of the table represents the proposed mid-year requests, and these are new requests. There's several different ins and outs that have made up the net reduction of expenditures of $600,000, and we'll go into more detail on that on the next slide. Also, you'll see here an increase in transfer out to other funds. So again, those are general fund transfers that are transferred to other funds that support both operational programs and or capital projects, such as like fleet, facilities, and things like that. So the total increase for new mid-year requests is $1.3 million. So the total change in general fund expenditures that's being presented as part of the mid-year review is $2.8 million. Next slide. Sorry if this is a little harder to see. A lot of information on one slide. So unlike the previous slide, this includes a review of several revenue sources and projected changes to those revenue sources. Specifically, you'll see here we have an increase of 2.5 million in real property transfer tax. And really, that's just kind of a trend of actuals that we've collected through December of this year, so for the first half of the fiscal year, as part of our review of revenues each year. We were being conservative in some ways, not sure of the continued impacts of the COVID-19 crisis. And so just again, monitoring the actual costs that are coming in last year as well as this year. So we're increasing that projected revenue by 2.5 million. Also see an increase of $1 million in sales tax. Again, that's kind of just shows the continued rebound in the economy, as well as continued increases in online purchases, such as Amazon and other online retailers, and where the actual point of sale is occurring within the city of Hayward. We also see an increase in property tax of a little over 800,000. Happy to report again an increase in projected cannabis tax. Again, we're looking at what we have received thus far from our cannabis business here in the city. And so we're projecting an actual increase of 268,000 over what was actually adopted. And then there's a slight increase in projected revenue in parking citations of about 30,000. So overall total increase to the general fund revenue of 4.6 million. Moving to expenditures, you can see here, aside from the $1.5 million that was already approved by council, the most significant here is the $1 million reduction, which is actually related to the navigation center. As part of the general fund budget, there was an appropriation approved of $1 million to support the continued operation of the navigation center. And so through the city's receipt of ARPA funds, we were able to allocate that $1 million to support the navigation center through ARPA funds. And so that reduction is actually returning the $1 million back to the general fund balance. The other expenditures, most of them are related to HR and some of the services that they provide. It's an increase of approximately 350,000 in contract services related to employee relations and response to COVID-19, and then $50,000 in various contract services related to services provided by maintenance. Lastly, outlined here are various transfer outs. So a total of $1.9 million in general fund transfers are being transferred to other funds to support, again, operation and capital improvement projects. Overall, the big picture, you can see here, we're actually reducing the projected use of general fund reserves. At the time of adoption, we had projected a use of reserves of 6.2 million. With a combination of both increased revenue as well as some increases in expenditure, we're actually projecting a use of $4.3 million with this proposed mid-year review.
And before we move on, I want to just be sure that we are all aware the numbers that are shown here do not include the transfer in of the 7.2 million in funding from the stimulus. That's shown in a little bit different place. It certainly will impact and reduce that use of reserves and actually turn it into a surplus. But for purposes of presentation, it's shown basically below these items on the financial statement. So
thank you for that clarification. Yes. Next slide, please. So again, as Dustin alluded to just previously, was the additional funding of ARPA funding that will be transferred from ARPA funds into the general fund. It is included in this graph here, which you probably are familiar with. This is a graph we provide council with whenever we are providing updates. It provides a look at our general fund reserve balance over the course of several years. Just kind of to give you a refresher, the yellow shading here is kind of where we strive to be, with that solid red line being 20% reserve and that middle kind of dashed red line representing 10%. So somewhere kind of in there, in that range is kind of our target. And as you can see, for several of the out years, we continue to kind of remain in that targeted area. Again, a significant change from prior years than you're probably used to looking at, where we kind of dip significantly below that middle dashed line, is really related to the change in beginning balance for fiscal year 2022, which I'll go into a little bit more in the next slide, and then the appropriation of the $14.5 million in ARPA funding.
The other thing I want to kind of touch on here is that, early in the pandemic, we were hearing from various sort of the membership organizations that put out best practices like GFOA, CSMFO, really sort of reducing that 20% target as the sort of best practice or ideal place to be. We certainly had discussions about it, and certainly after fiscal year 20, the first year of the pandemic, we were sitting there. Very happy to report that last year we actually finished the year building reserves and recovering almost fully our general fund reserve to pre-pandemic levels and getting above that 20% mark, which is really fantastic. Certainly did not expect that during fiscal year 2020. Really, honestly, didn't expect it during fiscal 2021 until seeing final numbers, and was really thrilled. But it certainly set us up nicely, and will help us to really use those funds that are coming in from the stimulus to leverage and get some of the things that we want to do done here in the very near future. So just wanted to pass that along.
Thank you. So this table here, again, is something you're probably very familiar with. We provide this on a regular basis, which is an update kind of look at our 5-year projection of general fund. And as Dustin stated, the beginning balance is definitely closer to what we were seeing in pre-pandemic. And significantly, the result of that is we ended up building reserves, like Dustin said, of about $5.2 million in fiscal year 2022. And so beginning balance was definitely higher than we had expected previously, which impacted, again, projected ending balance. Here you can see again, as Dustin stated and a couple previous slides, on a separate line to really kind of make sure that we're very clear on how much reserves are being projected to being used, aside from the actual ARPA funds that are being transferred in. So you can see we had a beginning balance in fiscal year 2022 of 36.1 million, but a projected shortfall of 4.3 million. And then with the transfer in of the 7.25 million in fiscal year 22, our ending balance is now little less than 39.1 million. And with this level, with this new ending balance, where the city is actually meeting its 20% targeted revenue policy, just at 20.8%. We did want to point out, again, a couple of things. One, like I said, we started the fiscal year with higher beginning balance than we had anticipated, which put the city in a much better financial situation. But we do want to call attention to the fact that in out years, we do continue to see that our expenditures continue to outpace projected revenue. And a lot of that has to do with increases in CalPERS costs, the change in the discount rate, as well as other benefit costs such as medical benefits. Those continue to really outpace our revenue projections. And so the city's really going to have to make sure that we continue to keep an eye on those revenue and expenditure costs so that we can continue to kind of make sure we have a very long-term financial stable situation for the city. Next slide. This is a very high-level summary of proposed mid-year changes for both other operating funds and then CIP funds, I apologize. And this is for expenditures only. The blue shaded table on the top half of the screen, it represents all other funds. It includes $22.7 million. And I just want to be super clear that within that 22.7 is the 18.9 million that was appropriated as part of ARPA. So we created a separate fund for the ARPA funds. And so that appropriation is represented in that 22.7 million. The new proposed mid-year requests equate to 22.7 million. The significant increase request here is actually just a transfer. It's $19.9 million, and it's a transfer from Measure C operating to Measure C capital. So it's just moving revenue that we collected and booked in our operating, and we'll be transferring it to the CIP to continue funding the project costs related to Fire Station 6 and Regional Fire Training Center. The remaining $2.8 million in requests are detailed kind of line item in the report, but I'd be happy to pull those up if you have any specific questions or concerns about the individual mid-year requests outlined in the report. The yellow shaded represents CIP funds. Again, the City Council approved previously $1.4 million in appropriations. And then there's also an increase of 4.7 million in new requests for mid-year. The most significant request in this proposed new request is $3.4 million. And this is really just an administrative cleanup. The city had received $3.4 million in proceeds from parcel group 7 that was inadvertently deposited into a different Route 238 fund. And so this essentially will just be moving the revenue that was collected in the incorrect account and moving it to the correct account. Again, the remaining requests in this report, I'm happy to go through each individual request if you have specific questions on those requests, and we can go ahead and pull those details up if you'd like. Next slide. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have or comments, and we can go back to any slides, or if you'd like to pull up that detail, we can do that as well.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to make sure Councilmember Wahab, you are with us now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Sarah, either of you? Sarah, Aisha?
Not really question, just wanted to really appreciate that. First of all, thank you for the report and presentation, and just how far we've come from, I mean, I can speak to 2014 and, you know, that all of the work and the belt tightening and dedication to, no, really, we do not have money, let us not, and all of that has been done by everybody over the last number of years, and, you know, led by our finance team. I really appreciate it. And it means that we need to continue being, you know, not loosening the belts, just, but it is really exciting to see that we were able to get to this place of breathing. And, you know, obviously it's uncomfortable to see still, you know, $1 million, $1 million something every year, but I also know that that's a worst case scenario budget. Um, you know, if we were passing budgets that had $1 million worth of reserve every year, I probably would be okay with that because that's not usually, we're usually, correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be,
Come in higher.
we come in a little higher, expenses come in a little lower. Like that's a cushion that I think we can live with. So, so yeah, I appreciate all of the progress there. And I just, actually I did have one question, sorry. What is the Hayward Trust and Agency Fund? It wasn't a term I remembered hearing before.
Yeah, I remember that, and I questioned it, and I thought I had the answer too, but let me remember it. Where was that?
It's tied to the MLK event, so is it the fund that?
Yeah, I
Is
think
that
that's what it
event, or
is. It's
what?
funds that we keep for them that
Correct.
come in when we collect at the end. That's right.
And it's multiple. It's sort of a group of funds. It's for a group of people that we shouldn't say people. A group of funds that we act as a trust for. We basically administer the funds. They're not necessarily ours, but we do keep records of them.
And okay, that's good to know. And I know we had cleaned up some, like when I first got here, we were still sort of tracking for the Hayward Coalition for Healthy Youth, and I think we kind of weren't doing much of that anymore. And so I wonder if maybe a future future agenda item is just kind of a review of what's in there, and is that still a role for the city to?
Sure, we can absolutely put something together on that.
Okay, thank you.
I do think the MLK one would be, as far as I know, will continue to be an active event. And I don't think are the volunteer dinner funds in there? Yeah, we usually get.
No, I don't believe so.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, those have sat in its own bank account, and so it's just probably time to think through, like, is this the way we want to do these things, or, and the answer may be yes. That's fine. I'm not assuming a foregone conclusion. I'm just saying maybe we should take a look. Thanks.
Okay.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, my package
No worries,
disappeared, but yeah, go ahead, Aisha. Sorry.
No worries, I appreciate it. Can I ask, is the other Hayward cannabis businesses up? I know we have one, and I'm specifically talking about retail. I know we approved the one that is supposed to, kind of improve the lobster shack, if you will. What is happening with that? Because I feel like it's almost 2 years that we've given potentially them a permit as well.
The lobster shack, the Hayward fishery,
the crab shack.
The one at Foothill and Sea.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, I think they are, running into similar financing issues. I know they've been going through the permitting process. I think they're looking for some additional financing. So, yeah, I mean, I think those are, we'll have to continue to help working with them to see if they can make it pencil and make it work. But I don't think I don't know what the current status is.
So I would like to really pay attention to that, because if it's been a year or 2 years, we need to kind of cut the cord.
Do we, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Did you have any more questions?
No, it's just a concern. It's a concern of mine.
Yeah.
We want businesses up and running, and I don't want it where, they say they can't do it and then they sell their permit, and this is a revenue source for us. And that was the whole point of, legalizing it in our city. So, or allowing it in our city. So I just want to highlight that as much as possible, because it does generate revenue and, kind of unrestricted revenue. So that's my two cents on that. But thank you. I really do appreciate the report too, and we're doing really well. Thank you.
Yeah, along those lines, do we get any tax revenue from any of the industrial area cannabis? That would be tracked here too, if we did. Are we getting anything from?
Correct. We haven't seen anything significant from those just yet. I remain hopeful. Certainly, I think as it continues, as the industry continues to grow, then they'll be profiting, and the city will see revenues from them.
Well, I mean, that is a lot of revenue then from one downtown outlet. That is pretty amazing. And, and the state is actually talking about lowering its tax. I mean, the story is that a lot of those places are kind of in, not doing well because of the illegal market, but, and the state is looking at their tax, but ours seems to be doing well if they're generating that much tax. Okay. I wanted to know the 7 point whatever it was million that you're putting into reserves in each of these 2 years. What is that? What does that represent actually? Money that actually can be put into the reserves? I mean, there are a lot of strings on the ARPA funds.
There are.
And
Yes.
I assume that most of the ARPA funds are being used to, that are, well, I don't know. I guess I'm confused about it because we spent a lot of money and a lot of that stuff was eligible. So that's gone back in, right? But that's not part of what are these $7 million?
I would call it a little bit of both. I mean, it's ARPA dollars that are reimbursing the city for lost revenues and also for COVID related expenses that might not otherwise be covered. So it's both.
But that's only part of the money that we're getting, so where's
the rest? It's going to community programs. So if you remember the funding plan, we basically split, it got to the economic development. If you saw the CEDC presentation on the gift card, the matching gift card. So all of that is being funded with ARPA dollars. The first time homebuyers program, we've got a ton of different money in housing programs, money for the navigation center, the $1 million that got transferred back to the navigation center out of the general fund. That was ARPA dollars. So we basically, it was about 50% of the ARPA funds went to community facing programs and 50% went to revenue replacement for the city's general fund.
Okay, so that part's like the revenue replacement, and we could count on that next year too, you think? I mean,
correct. Yeah, it was.
Look like we're down in revenues, though. Are we really?
We could have taken it all at one time, but we're only getting getting 2 equal lump sum payments, and we're spreading out the projects over the 4 years. We're recovering 14 million for lost revenues in the general fund. The other 24 point something is being tracked in a separate fund. And that's where all of those projects live. We're assuming that at some point the feds are going to show up and say, we want to audit all of these funds. And so we're tracking it all separately. That's why it's showing up in the general fund as a transfer in. So when we show all of the expenses in the same fund, it will show up, as a transfer out to the general fund, but it's to replenish lost revenues for that time.
Are the other revenues then also in there in the different departments where they were used? Or yeah, okay, so it's like revenue for the economic development department was used to do that. Okay, so I see that you have counted, counted the second tranche we should be getting sometime in a couple of months, toward the reserve picture too. So I didn't really have any other questions other than this doesn't include our CalPERS and OPED status, and I don't know that they've been impacted at all by. I mean, that's not part of the budget, but when are we going to look at that? And, can we look at possibly, since we're even a little bit over now, right now, where we want it to be, I realize that's not playing out in the future and we might want to leave it in reserves. But, I mean, there's sometimes you can reduce expenses that by, making a payment into your long-term liabilities. So I don't know. When are we going to discuss that, all of that?
Stay tuned. So we will be, so each year we bring back, a look during the budget season at the city's unfunded liabilities and long-term debt. And so we'll certainly be bringing that report to this committee and then also, I believe, to council. The other item, which I'm excited to see the final analysis on, and we will be discussing it next month at this committee, is a look at the potential use of pension obligation bonds. And so we'll be taking a look at doing exactly the possibility of doing exactly what you're saying, and whether or not it's would be a good idea for the city. And certainly, it may or may not be. We've got to do the analysis. We're working through that right now, and we'll have it at next month's committee meeting. And then whether or not we want to take it to the full council, we can kind of have that discussion next month.
Okay, great. And just, it's really, as Council Member Lamnon said, just when we've looked at like these, like this year, we were going to be way underwater, 5 years ago. This year was going to be, we wouldn't have any money left at all, or, we'd be, and so it's just an amazing job. And I just want to credit all of you, the whole team, and, over the years for putting us on this track of fiscal solvency, and let's keep it going. I guess we should write a thank you letter to Congress for passing ARPA, but
that has been a tremendous value and help to the city, not just the city's budget, but also the community in terms of what we're being able to do with those funds.
Yeah, because obviously COVID would have hit really hard and we would not be in this picture right now had we, and we would not have been able to provide the community the help that we have. So, that's helped a lot. Okay, so that is all I really had. So if there are no other questions or comments, we can move on to the next agenda item, which is, and this is going to go to council, right? Next, is it next or?
Correct. Yes. I'm sorry. On Tuesday.
Okay. And then all we have left is the, we did the minutes,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. Okay. We to review the agenda planning calendar.
And I apologize. I don't think that I've got it in front of me. I usually do. Let me see if I can access it. I closed everything to share the presentation for Nicole, and I don't have it handy. So I guess really it's not much different other than the addition of the item that we were just discussing, and that is bringing an analysis of viability of pension obligation bonds to the committee next month for consideration of that analysis. No action will be requested necessarily. Certainly, if the committee thinks it's a good idea, it could refer it to the council. But next month's session will not require the city to do anything other than simply accept the information, use the information to consider, when looking at viable ways to reduce unfunded liabilities moving forward.
Okay. Any questions from, or, comments? Aisha?
No questions, but thank you.
Okay, Sarah?
Yeah, just a kind of quick check-in. So I think you already answered this. There were a number of topics, and unfortunately I couldn't find mine, but there were a number of topics we talked about last month coming in. I do pension obligations there, Measure C's there. Was there anything else that was kind of in that new.
Not during this fiscal year, but certainly we will be in that. That's why this calendar only goes through this fiscal year, meetings in this fiscal year. But certainly we'll be bringing that next fiscal year's calendar very soon to a theater near you.
That makes sense. Okay. And then just to not lose public banking off of the non-scheduled items.
Certainly.
That would be great.
We continue to follow up with that group, sort of frequently on a monthly basis to see where they're at, to see if they have more information for us.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate that. Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. What is the feasibility study?
That I believe it's referring to the pension bonds.
But they're listed as the pension bond obligation analysis is listed for March 16th. And then non-scheduled future agenda topics. The first one is feasibility study.
I don't know. Oh, you know what? I think that's a hangover leftover from public banking.
That's okay.
I think that's
Okay.
what
Well, the words public banking should be in there.
correct.
So, okay. And then let's see. Oh, well, I mean, I would just bring the community foundation is an important thing, because also, I mean, I think that also ties into our, fundraising for our Stack Center. Although I think we're able to do that separately, correct? I mean, we are trying to fundraise for that. That must be going where is that money going? Or who has control of that money that we have collected or for the Stack Center?
So I think there's a couple different places. I know the county is retaining a separate account for the Kaiser donation and the county dollars. And then we have a capital project for the Stack Center. And so any revenues that come in go into the capital project budget.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I do think we can raise some money from the community. I don't know how much, but I think we should try to go along. I mean, obviously the big dollars are coming in from, government grants and foundations, but, I think we should try to get the community involved. So, and I think the community foundation was a really good idea. I think people responded for COVID, certainly. I hope we can get that housed somewhere, that we're.
It's a priority for this spring to really evaluate whether there's been some staffing changes at the East Bay Community Foundation that we've heard about. So we think that may help. We're going to see. And then if not, then we're going to come back and make some recommendations for potential changes.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all I had then. So is there any other announcements or comments about anything? Well, then, if not, we can have a remarkably short Budget and Finance Committee meeting. I know we're going into the budget session, so we might have longer ones, but thank you for the report. Thank you for making us all smile and feel happy for the state of the city, and keep it up. Keep up the great work there. And if there's nothing else, I think we can adjourn, correct? Okay. Everybody have a nice dinner and evening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for your time.
Good night, everyone.
Night.